It's Mark, Medicine with the Metals. Today we have another fantastic guest, another great story, about plant medicines and the healing modalities here. And Jenna, we have Aaron today. Aaron had was diagnosed with ALS back in 2022 of March. I think he was telling me, and we're going to let him tell a little bit of a story. We're going to talk a little bit about what ALS is. Like most of us heard about it, but we'll let him explain on what it is, and we're really excited. I'm excited to hear from you. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, it's good to be here, Mark.
Thank you.
Actually, it feels like it was March of 22. Is actually this past March, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
I started experiencing some strange issues last year in 2022. Thought it was just, getting old kind of stuff. And it took many months, as it often does with ALS, to get to a diagnosis. But in March, first week of March, I was given a formal diagnosis of ALS after many months of testing and diagnostics. One of the kind of cruel things about this disease, and among many, is that in addition to there not being a cure, there's also not a diagnostic or test to identify it. So a lot of people that get this, sometimes years can go by without getting the proper diagnosis. And once people receive it, often they have very little time left. So I've actually been very, very fortunate that things move very quickly for me, and that I was able to get in with the right folks, an amazing team. And then I think my introduction to plant medicines and leveraging them for this condition has just really helped in so many ways. And I think I've just scratched the surface on understanding what that is. And it's an amazing journey.
Yeah, it truly is. It truly is. So let me ask you something. How did you kind of know you had, and just touch on what ALS is real quick? I mean,
Yeah. So ALS is a motor neuron disease. It's actually in the same category as Parkinson's, MS, and Alzheimer's. Believe it or not, they're all considered motor neuron diseases. Unfortunately, ALS is kind of the biggest bummer of them all. It's a sad statistic that currently 100% of people that are diagnosed with this disease expire from this disease. So it has 100% mortality rate.
right.
And out of all of the others, it's the one that, at least as of now, 100% of the time is fatal. It really becomes down to a question of time. And one of the hard things about this is that when you are diagnosed with ALS, there's generally no prognosis. So, and there's a couple reasons why. So ALS is essentially in the simplest terms, I call it, it's the dying of the nerves. And it's the dying of the part of the nerves that speak to the muscles. And so one of the things that happens as the nerves die, it's, think of the nerves as a coaxial cable. And a coaxial cable has this kind of metal sheathing around the edge. The nerves, this sheathing essentially begins to disintegrate, and that's what facilitates the communication with the muscles. So as that communication breaks down, the muscles don't get any kind of communication, and then they begin to atrophy and ultimately die. And so, one of the things that really caught my attention was when I started losing muscle mass very, very quickly. A year ago, I was probably 50 pounds heavier. I was a big guy. I'm still a pretty big guy, and fortunately for me, that has really helped me. So motor neuron disease. Ultimately, there's four things that happen with ALS. The challenge with the diagnosis and a prognosis in particular is that these things are different for everybody in the order in which they happen and the magnitude in which they happen. And it really all depends on the progression of the disease. But the four things are you lose the ability to move, you lose the ability to speak, you lose the ability to eat, and you lose the ability to breathe. And so it ultimately ends in total paralysis.
So that might have been that was really quite scary. So you're diagnosed with it. Now you're looking for all these avenues. Now you're looking at this disease that is 100% fatality. And what do you do?
What do you do? So for me, it was, at least at the time, my onset was there's either a limb onset or what they call bulbar onset. I think of it very simply as some people it starts from the limbs in, more often than not the feet up. Some people it starts from the head down. Obviously, it starts from the head down. That's your eating, your respiratory system, and that's, you can imagine that's bad. And so the prognosis could be much worse. For me, it started in my legs.
Gotcha.
So my immediate question, in fact, I think my very first question that day when it was formally diagnosed is, how long can I expect to walk on my own two legs? And this was in March. And most of the questions I had asked, the doctor was like, we really won't know. It'll take time. We won't know until things progress.
And that's got to be very frustrating.
It is. It's frustrating because when you're given a diagnosis that's ultimately going to end in you leaving this earth and leaving this body, which I now choose to think of it as, I'm going to be just losing this body. Right. I've since discovered, and I'm on a path to discover a much higher purpose. But, he did answer that question, and his answer, although vague, was enough for me to get things started. And what he told me was, he goes, I think it's safe to say that you'll be able to use your own legs and get around at least the rest of this year. There was no guarantee of that, but that was his feeling. There's days where it's hard for me to believe that to be true. And there's days where I can see that happening.
So even right now to this. So take us into this, Aaron. Take us into because this is really a short period of time now. I mean, because we're going into August.
March.
So, I mean, we're looking just at a few months. So what really got you into, plant medicine? Because, in most people's mind, we're in the Western medicine world. Plant medicine is becoming more and more available and more wide open. But what made this snap?
Yeah. So it was in February where it was first mentioned that this was a possibility. I reached out to a friend of mine back east who works in wellness and different modalities, who was very influential in driving cannabis education and legalization in Pennsylvania. And it was somebody from my childhood. I hadn't seen her in almost 30 years, and she just kind of popped in my head. And I reached out to her and I described what was going on. I said, I think I'm facing this diagnosis. There's all this information out there, very little, which is helpful. I don't know what to do. I need some clarity. And it just so happened that she was affiliated, had friends with a group that she attended Yahe ceremony with in the last couple of years.
Right.
She shared with me an opportunity that was going to be coming up at the end of March, and said, this might be something to help you with that clarity. So it was my question about clarity. I need to understand. I need to have some clarity. How do I move forward? I'm being bombarded with all this information. It's impossible to sift through. In fact, I got to where I just stopped looking. I stopped Googling. I stopped reading. Everybody in my life was sending me articles. I said, I need some resources to help me get some clarity. And she shared with me a little bit about her experience with the grandmother. And on that call, I said, I'm in. And before the call ended, she suggested probably one of the most important and profound things to me, and that is that now that you've set your intention to join and to go, consider the possibilities that you've already begun your relationship with grandmother,
Yeah.
and recommend, begin that conversation.
Yeah.
And that night I began that conversation. So this was early mid-February.
Hmm.
I started right away in the logistics of getting signed up. I hadn't had the formal diagnosis yet.
Hmm.
In March 6th, I then, on the day that I received the diagnosis, I had already signed up for this. And I had the conversation with my doctors, Western medicine. I said, I want to share with you something that I'm planning to do. So I received the diagnosis on March 6th.
Yep.
They shared with me what their next steps were.
Hmm.
And that was to then come in, should I choose to work with them, and meet the entire team. I'm working with a university that has a multidisciplinary approach to this disease, all the different functionalities, including trials and that kind of thing. And I shared with them my intention to attend a ceremony at the end of the month, what it meant to me, and they gave me their blessing. They were excited about it. So these are my Western doctors,
Yeah.
who basically said, they thanked me for being transparent.
Hmm.
They told me if it gave me hope and made me feel joy, that I should pursue it.
Hmm. It's
Uh,
amazing. It's amazing that, you know, you're going through this horrible stuff, this prognosis. And, we all know there's these available means out there. They have been around for thousands of eons. And now these doctors, in the space we're in, we're more aware of how these doctors feel about these medicines behind the scenes. And isn't that like, look what happened right there? That whole, they want to take you down the Western medical path. I mean, that's great. But now you have options. And I think that's where we're trying to get to with these conversations like this, to give
yeah.
us options, right? So continue with what after they give you your blessing, what happened then?
Yeah. So they gave me my blessing on that. And as soon as I felt that encouragement and support, I shared with them other things that I had been thinking about and researching. Understand too that in February, when I first received this as a possibility, I started researching everything.
Sure, we all do.
Um, and
Mhm.
actually, before ayahuasca, the first thing that I was looking to expand upon was leveraging mushrooms.
Mhm.
I had used mushrooms. Mushrooms was my psychedelic of choice. I'm a big Deadhead. Been seeing the Dead since the early '80s, and when they started playing again with Dead and Company, I found that was my, from a recreation, music, creativity standpoint,
But was
psilocybin
it?
was
I mean,
something.
if we think about it back then, but was it so much that, or were we trying to find something?
I don't know. I use that. It's like, it's so interesting when I say the word recreational, because
Right.
now in my life it's impossible for me to think of any of these
Oh,
medicines as being
right.
recreational.
Hmm.
But in that same conversation, after the doctor's reaction to the ayahuasca, I share
Right.
with them that I also intend to put together a regimen to leverage the psilocybin, because of all of the medicines and all the information that's available, that's the one that made so much sense to me. That all the work that had been done to look at its impact on rebuilding the neural pathways and that kind of thing
Hmm.
completely falls in line with what I'm dealing with.
Well, all these medicines do though, and I have here so many stories of being on this path of people with ALS, Parkinson's, the same things you mentioned. That, can I say, the bullshit alert goes off when you say miracles and plants, but hmm, there is definite hope.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, so I shared at that moment, I shared my intent to leverage both psilocybin and ayahuasca.
Right.
I also asked that we not schedule this next appointment, this full day of meeting everybody, until after I get back.
Right.
And they agreed. And so I was at the end of the month. I attended a 3-night ceremony with an extraordinary group of folks, led by a Taita from Colombia, who's from a pretty well-known lineage of Taitas. I don't know how much or how little I should share on the show. You'll have to tell me, but there's a lineage of Taitas that are part of the Ingana tribe in Colombia.
Mm-hmm. Right.
A couple brothers and a father and a grandfather, and I sat with this group, and it was the most extraordinary thing that I've ever experienced. And people ask me, if you had to sum it up, how do you sum it up? And I have to say that it was horrible and beautiful.
Yeah. And all those experiences like that. I mean, that's your first experience. And just, I think, like you say, like you just said it, it's facing your worst fears to come out on the side of like this beautiful, I don't know. But it takes, the process of this medicine, and how I see it, as I have indulged in almost all these plant medicines, that it's all a process, and you have to break down these old barriers and these old walls, and getting these neural pathways going again is all part of these plant medicines. And I think these traumas that sit in our stomachs and our stomachs are the pathways for everything. I mean, we say it's our brain, it's our gut. I mean, everything relies on our gut, and these medicines are beautiful to help with that and alleviate that. So you went on this journey. You had 3 days experience. I would assume it was 2 days and 2 nights and 1 day, or was it just 2?
No, it's actually their ceremonies are 3 nights.
3 nights, huh?
So they started at, we arrived at the Maloka. It's around 7-ish. I think the first medicine was served 8-ish. And we were kind of coming back together after sunrise. They were very, very long evenings, 3 in a row.
Now, let me ask you something, Aaron. That first experience, because I like to ask some people this, your very first experience, that first rush of that medicine that you've never, mushrooms were nothing compared to the jolt of ayahuasca. So what was that? What was that like for you? Was it fearful? Was it scary? What was that for you? Did you want to run?
No, well, I couldn't run.
Yeah.
So at the point where I went, I was already, part of this disease is that you get depleted very, very quickly. So I don't run anywhere anymore. It was strangely peaceful. On the first night of ceremony, I actually was on an area. I was directly in front of the Taita. And there was some very quick learnings. One is that I realized that I was in a very, very safe, loving environment, and that I immediately felt like no matter what was coming my way, that I was in good hands. And I felt really peaceful with that. Now, after I took that drink and I went back and I sat on my mat thinking about how long, because they encourage you to try to, keep it down for they talked about a half hour, 45 minutes, before you purge. And I remember sitting there and I sat on my mat for about 10 minutes and just kind of breathe and tried to, keep it down. And during that time of just focusing on my breathing, which is, one of the things they kind of taught in there, they did a little primer, up front. They kind of talked us through the best way to purge and, and some things to consider, especially and probably most importantly, coming back to your breath. That was something that they spoke about. And in that 10 minutes, I realized I was really okay, and I was feeling very, very peaceful. Now, probably in the next 45 minutes, things really started kind of coming together and happening, and it was scary. It was brutal. It was frustrating. The struggle and the suffering uh, that leads to the kind of strength that you're pursuing is really something. I mean, it really is something.
Yeah.
I also learned, and this is something thankful to this disease. I learned a lot about purging, and there's a lot of emphasis on purging. I mean, the medicine is a purgative. There's an expectation that you're going to purge. In fact, when you go up for another drink, they ask you, did you purge? Are you drunk? Did you have visions? I learned I could not purge. I learned that in that moment that while my my reflexes, which are when you have this disease, your reflexes are hyperactive. So you tap me with a little mallet and I'm flinging all over the place.
Right.
So my gag reflexes were ready to go.
Hmm.
But after your gag reflexes start things off, it's your core, your stomach muscles that take over. Well, my stomach muscles disappeared in December and January with all my other muscles. So I would lean over the bucket ready to go, and I couldn't purge. And for hours I begged to grandmother, why can't I purge? And so I cried, and I cried all night, and just cried like I've never cried before. And that was my purging. That was how that was my release.
Yep.
It was scary. It was beautiful. It was powerful. The visions were profound. And most importantly, I started to recognize that the intentions that I went in with, that I sat down and shared with the Taita, I had a very, very strong belief, even after night one, that I was going to achieve those intentions that I was seeking, which to me was my miracle because, my main intention was about clarity. And I had kind of three things that were part of that. One is I knew that I had been carrying around decades worth of junk in my heart and in my head and everywhere else. And I knew that, I mean, I couldn't stand up straight. I walked slunched because I had all that weight on my shoulders.
Right.
And I just knew that I had to let that go. And so my first intention was I have to let this go. It's not serving me. It has to go. And then with the belief that that was going to happen, my second intention was, and I need to understand how to not let this happen again. I intend to not hold on to things anymore. I need to learn and will learn to let things slide off. And then ultimately all of this was for my main intention. And that was, I need to do these things so I can have clarity. I need to have clarity in how I proceed forward. I have all these options, none of which make sense or seem good or seem bad. Nothing makes sense. I need to have clarity on how I move forward. And he asked me, what does that mean? What does moving forward mean? And I thought about a beautiful friend of mine really helped me with this and kind of understanding and defining what that means. And it's really very, very simple, is that, I want to live a life where I am spending my time thinking beautiful thoughts and walking a beautiful path. And how do I get there? And I left that weekend with all of it, and then more and more.
What a great story.
I left with the clarity I needed. And I have to tell you, the week after, I had my appointment ready to go. I knew the team I was going to work with, the direction, and I actually signed up for a trial. I decided in ceremony that one, I knew that I would be ready to. My work was to be ready to leave this body. I was no longer scared of leaving this body. I was scared of everything that was going to happen between now and then,
Right. True.
but the leaving the body part was
Yeah.
not something I was scared of.
Mm.
But I also realized at that moment that I needed to do something that was going to be meaningful for other people.
Yeah.
And so I was going to find the gnarliest, scariest experimental trial that the doctors were most excited about and sign up for it, which I did. And I'm currently in it. And it's very exciting and scary and all those things. But that would, to me, that's, people talk about miracles happening in an ayahuasca ceremony.
Mhm.
And man, I experienced every bit of it.
So let me ask you, how are you feeling now, though? I mean, prognosis wise, doctors, when you go and see them, do they say there is no 100%? I know this disease and other people do. I don't think it's curable, but what do they say prognosis wise? Anything that after this medicine, has it done for you? I know mind wise
Yeah.
and clarity wise, yes. You found your heart space, you found your soul, you found things.
Yeah. Well, that's a very big question to unpack.
Yeah,
So I'll share a couple things.
yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things, the most profound thing physically that I have been working towards getting some confirmation of, and in a couple of weeks I'm going to be getting one step closer to that because I'm signed up for another ceremony.
Beautiful.
So up until the ceremony, my progression was I had been kind of keeping track of it, and basically what was happening with me was, for about 4 or 5 days in a row, I would be kind of steady, no better, no worse than the day before. And then there would be a 24 or 48 hour period of time where I would dip, so I was kind of steady, and then I would dip, rough 24 or 48 hours period, lots of symptoms. And there's all kinds of weird symptoms. I call them the aliens. I got aliens living in me. But then I would come out the other side a little bit, lower than where I started from a baseline. And that was a pattern. I mean, that had been going on for, at least a couple months. And I was really paying attention to it. When I came out of ceremony, there's two major things that were immediately noticeable. The first was one of the major symptoms. They're called, they're twitching. They call them fasciculations. So I call them aliens. But if you look at me and if you sit and watch my legs and my arms, mostly they twitch. You'll see little bumps going all over time. Those slowed down and softened significantly, noticeably, to where I would lay in bed with my wife at night, and in fact she's one of the first notes. She's like, I can hardly feel them, because they were kind of annoying her. We hold her and she would feel this twitching.
That's amazing.
So that happened. But the most profound thing was that it was almost 14 days before I felt a dip. And so after that, I kind of almost had this desperation to find another ceremony. So that really propelled me into a lot of deep research. So when I got back from ceremony, I started doing a lot of research on the medicine and the origin and the different tribes and where it's coming from, understanding the connections between those tribes along the Amazon and how the medicine is coming here and how it's manifesting in other areas. So that has become a big part of my life now, is researching and understanding the medicine so that I can find resources close to home. That was ultimately the goal. And so it took a while, because one of the things I'm learning is that, with the increasing popularity of plant medicines, there's more and more people that are getting involved in this, good and bad. And it's really important to know who you're working with. Yes. I'm excited that I found a group much closer to home. I'm attending a ceremony here in a couple of weeks.
Right.
And I've also, the same group that I met with at the end of March is actually coming back to the States at the end of September, and I'm going to be joining them as well. But I've had this desperation, and when I came out of the ceremony in 14 days, I'm like, it can't be a fluke. It can't be coincidence. I've got to do this again.
Right.
And it doesn't seem like it's that long ago. I mean, this was the end of March,
Right.
but boy, it feels like forever.
Yeah.
And so I can't even tell you how excited I am to drink again.
Yeah.
But my intention is very different this time. I've been doing so much work on my mind and my heart and my spirit, and I've leveraged other medicines, and have been to other ceremonies, and I've been invited to some very special groups
Really cool.
from my connections. I've now done Wachuma, Mambandero, Wilka. I don't know if you've ever heard of or tried Will, but
Wilca's one I not have. So let me ask you something
yeah.
there with how has the psilocybin come with you? The psilocybin.
Yeah, yeah. So I was up until about 2 months ago, maybe a month and a half ago. I was just kind of experimenting. I was microdosing. I was macrodosing. I was just kind of wake up in the morning and what my heart felt like that day.
I understand. I
Yeah.
understand. Very intuitive. Mhm.
Yeah. Did a lot of reading, I found a couple trusted folks to work with, tried lots of different strain. I mean, all kinds of stuff. A couple months ago, I decided, and I also had a discussion with my doctors, and we both felt the same way, that if I was going to do this, I needed to be a little more regimented.
Right.
And so I picked a person who I know who's a cultivator. Actually met her in ceremony at the end of March, and had been working with her. And I said, I really feel like I need to get more regimented in this. I've been working on getting regimented in other things. I've been working on documenting things and keeping a journal
Mhm.
and all these things. And I said, it's now time for me to be more structured with the psilocybin. And so she said, well, here's a strain that I've used with other people that I think we should start with. She said, here's a regimen I use with someone else who's had great success. Why don't we start here? And so I'm doing now a third of a gram Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Mhm.
And tomorrow we'll finish my first 6 weeks. So it's been a
That's
month and a
great.
half ago.
Mhm. So
Um,
how do you feel? Because I think it's truly important, being on this path and watching so many progressions and so many thousands and thousands of people. We truly believe that psilocybin in the microdosing is so important after these journeys, just because it maintains that level of clarity. It's just clarity. So now you're microdosing the psilocybin. You're on the 6 weeks. How are you feeling now?
it's hard to say. I certainly have been feeling in general more calm,
Hmm.
and I feel like I'm coping with things better, which is really important with this disease, because it's a big adventure in and of itself, where literally I wake up each day sometimes experiencing something new, and so it's like it takes all day for me to get used to what I woke up with this morning, and then knowing that I'm going to wake up tomorrow with a new set of possibilities, new twitching,
Right.
cramps in another area, something else starting to die. I mean, it's being able to cope is really, really important.
Yeah.
And
Especially
so,
with like a disease you have, that
yeah,
is, I mean, cancer, ALS, these
yeah,
these 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 end of life kind of,
yeah,
I shouldn't have categorized cancer as that, but you know, and now it's giving you the ability to at least maybe, one thing that you have accomplished, and you'll accomplish more on this path, is that knowing of death, how death is more, because we've been so stigmatized in this country to fear that. And what's to fear once you pass these barriers, which I think you have right now? I think you're definitely doing a lot of integration. I mean, you are really figuring this out in a very short period of time, which is
yeah.
beautiful. You really are. And I can't wait to talk to you again after your experience here, because each one of these experiences, you know I got to evolve here because I think you're always evolving. And, each one of these experiences helps you evolve more. And you'll see what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I have. I had no idea how much I could evolve in such a short period of time.
Right. Right.
Between the medicines and some of the shamanic work I've been doing, meditation. One, it is very clear to me that all of these things are working well together.
Right.
That's very obvious to me. It's also obvious that the mushrooms are helping me in many ways. I can't say that any of the things that I'm doing right now are helping me physically,
Right.
but the better that I'm able to feel in my heart and my spirit and my mind, it helps me deal with the things coming my way. It helps me, feel the optimism that I need to believe that I can heal and turn this thing around.
And isn't that,
And
as humans, all we need most of the time?
yeah,
And
I have yeah.
what is you mentioned your wife. What does she think about all this?
uh, this is hardest on my family.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife is a healer. My wife is a Reiki practitioner.
Mm.
She
Isn't that
really
funny?
gets to. It is funny, yes.
Yeah.
She discovered this gift. I think 5, 6, 7 years ago. She just really does it. Um, I want to say casually. She has some steady clients, but she has a day job. My wife does not use plant medicines. It's not been in her part of her calling. Early on, before this diagnosis, she was very opposed to a lot of these medicines, these things I would talk about,
Mm-hmm.
mostly out of not understanding it, out of fear, just not experience. But she's become incredibly supportive. She is seeing how important they are to me. Uh, she is also seeing and experiencing the benefits of them firsthand. She's also learned a lot about it, and I think she's much more comfortable now because I've continued to be transparent, completely transparent with my doctors. When I started the trial, it was under the same university but a different group of folks, and I had to share with them all the things I was considering doing. When I met the first group, I said, mushrooms and ayahuasca were the only things on my to-do list. When I started the trial, I had a much longer list, and I shared with them all the things that I was considering doing. And what was kind of amazing is that, and it was a big learning for me, and I'm still learning about it. The doctors were totally fine with all the things that I listed that were natural. The things that I listed that were synthesized or had human intervention, they asked me to not leverage. And so I told them I plan to do ayahuasca again. They said it's fine. I told them I'd like to do LSD. They said we'd prefer you not. You look at the active ingredients and the psychoactives. They're the same, or very similar. I told them I was planning to do wachuma, possibly peyote, and I'd like to do MDMA. They said we prefer you not do MDMA. Wachuma and MDMA, they're the same. One's all natural from the ground. No intervention by humans except to prepare it and boil it down and serve it. I share with them the Wilca, which they didn't know anything about. I told them it was most common with Yopo, and they looked it up and did some research. But everything I have run by them so far that has been truly plant medicine, they have said, okay, they've said the same thing. If you feel it's helping and it brings you joy and it's helping you with this, then we're okay with it. Isn't
Isn't that amazing how, we've we've seen this for a long time. I mean, we have been in this space, me and Michelle, for a while, and we see the medical part of this, that niche of doctors and psychologists and therapists. They know what's going on. They see the benefits. To sit with somebody for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years and talk therapy, the same talk you were talking 7 years ago, and not working, but sit with psilocybin with that same person in two settings and maybe change their life. They know the gig is up, and they know they can't really do anything about it because they're licensed right now. But if you talk to them honestly about it, they're going to give you the advice they give you.
Oh yeah.
So before we end this, because we have to end this shortly, and I do definitely want to get back with you again after your next ceremony for sure. People like to see people's paths. You said a lot of great things on this call, and I think in the short time, you're going to give a lot of people a lot of support, especially being comfortable with your vessel, your body, how you just understand it now. And that maybe one day you will depart your vessel, and that's okay. You're okay with that. The approvals of the Western medical doctors. Isn't that amazing? It's amazing that they're giving us support in that different avenue. They're at least saying not no, but hey, it's up to you. Go educate yourself first. And that's why we're doing this. So
none of that, they said yes. They actually said yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't even that go ahead. It was they said yes.
Yeah.
And they were supportive and they were excited. And that was, that meant everything to me, especially in that
because
moment.
The 60s did us a big injustice, okay? The big injustice. Nixon, the war on drugs, the frying your eggs. It just really, why are all plant medicine Schedule 1? You have to ask yourself, why are all these Schedule 1? Go down the list. They don't even have a clue what they are, but they're going to stigmatize them. We all know why. But, I'm really looking forward to our next conversation. I think we're going to see Aaron that has, more awareness then. You're going to, because I think you're going to navigate this path now a little easier. When you sit with this medicine next time, you're going to know how to navigate it, and you're going to know she's coming. This is the way I need to go. And it's beautiful.
Yeah, it sure is.
So thank you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Great to speak with you.
Yeah, we're going to definitely get you back on again. And, your story's powerful. And do you want to say one last word?
I appreciate being here, and I appreciate how open the information now is flowing. And I found you, and I think it met you through one of the Facebook groups, and that group has become very beneficial to me. I'm starting to now meet some like-minded folks in the neighborhood. So I really want to thank you for making sure that this dialogue is happening and that this awareness is growing. I think it's really important, especially that it's not just happening, but that's happening in the right way. And that people are learning about it the right way from the right people. I think that's absolutely essential.
Mm-hmm. People like you and me, you look like a pretty normal guy. We're pretty normal people that are just looking for a different way.
Oh yeah. I was 6 months ago, I was a U.S. vice president of sales for a $16 billion company.
I totally get it.
And now I'm on a podcast talking about plant medicine. So I am as normal as they come. So
and we're not crazy. We're not crazy. We just found another way.
Yeah. It's like I've come a long way from being just a very high performing pothead, back in the day.
Yeah.
So
you seem like a really great guy, and I will continue this conversation with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.